a huge shout out to a Jasper County jury this week who, after working hard over 11 days and deliberating 5 hours, made a world of difference for a 3-year-old who had been injured at birth. It was our privilege as trial lawyers. In fact, one of the great parts of our job is being able to speak for a little fellow like this one, like Warren, in front of a Joplin jury, and do our best to guide the jury, who were dealing with foreign concepts and strange areas of the anatomy they'd never thought about, to get to the truth, where there had been multiple experts from both sides, and where they could have ended up very confused about what the truth was. But this jury showed again for us, Scott, what a difference the civil justice system can make in righting wrongs that have happened when they care enough to look past the confusion and the oftentimes attempts to mislead and the dense fog that can be created by experts that are in part just designed to try to defend doctors, and see through that and actually embrace the truth and make a difference for a person's life. So our trial team at Johnson, Vorhees and Martucci, you and me, Scotty, and Toddy, and our paralegal and nurse consultant and our IT specialist had the great privilege of bringing this case to the jury. And this essentially was about a little fella who had been delivered with forceps over 3 years ago, and whose mother had previously told her real doctor, I don't want forceps to be used because of an injury to my aunt from forceps, and then had an on-call doctor come in and essentially get there to catch the baby and decide for her to use forceps without even discussing with her that he was going to do so, and without letting her know that really there was no benefit to the child in doing so, in fact, risk to the child of a potential brain injury. And so, this mother, without her knowledge, had forceps put inside her body, put around her baby's head to take her baby out, and in doing so, there was a bleed that had started within the brain and ended up with a catastrophic stroke to the baby that over time was made clear and resulted in him having right-sided hemiplegia and cerebral palsy.
Let me jump in for a second, because a lot of the times when people hear about trial verdicts or claims like this, many of them think that this is a claim that doesn't need to be brought or it's frivolous. And one of the things that this case is an example of for me is I think that every woman has the right to decide what procedures are done to her. I think every person has that right. And in this case, one of the major parts of the claim was that this doctor did something without asking her permission, and in doing so hurt her child. And I think that was one of the things that resonated with the jury is we don't think that's the way the care ought to be given here in Jasper County. And so while we're trying to get compensation for this little guy, we're also making sure that we're reinforcing the rights of everybody, because it could be your wife or my granddaughter, somebody who's going to be getting care later on, and we want that care to be good quality care where the patient gets to decide what's done to them, and they get to have an explanation of the benefits and the risks and the alternatives before something's done. And I think that it's not just this case that we need to talk about, but it's the idea of why this case is so important is because it really reinforces that, one, the truth matters, and two, as patients, we get to choose what's done to us and for us. And the doctor doesn't just get to make decisions and then, if harm happens, harm happens.
That choice ought to be based on a good understanding of why it is any sort of operation needs to take place. And obviously here, again, I think, as I agree with you, what resonated with the jury is there ought to be more benefit than risk if you're going to do something that's going to create risk.
And in this case, there wasn't any benefit. I mean, Warren could have just been delivered naturally.
No emergency, no urgency, admitted facts in the case. The doctor was there for 3 minutes and chose to deliver this baby. And that's wrong. And what means something to us as trial lawyers is that folks in Jasper County were able to see that that's wrong, and to see that this baby needed help because of a serious injury that occurred with no fault of his own and no fault to his mother, just because the doctor got in a rush and decided he needed to deliver the baby for reasons that remain a mystery to me.
And I think that I want to swing back to something you talked about earlier, is the jury. This was some of the more complex medicine that probably anybody on that jury has ever heard. They heard from 11 different experts, and very often you're hearing from a neuroradiologist for the defense, and you're hearing one from the patient, and they're saying exactly the opposite thing. And these folks really wrestled with the medicine and spent the time to figure out what the truth was. And one of the things that struck me a little bit about the defense in this case was they were essentially saying, the truth doesn't matter as so long as the doctor didn't harm this child. And I think that the jury verdict reaffirms that here in Jasper County, we do care about the truth. And I think that's, again, an important lesson is many times the defense tries to cloud or destroy the truth or sort of distort what the facts are. And I think that a lot of times claims like this have to be brought so that you can actually understand what happened. Because I care what happened that caused that little boy's brain damage. You know, whether it's the doctor who did something wrong or not, I want to know what the truth is. And I think the jury did too.
No, I agree. And even through dealing with those 11 experts, the jury was able to penetrate through that and see that this little boy has needs in the future, and they met those needs with every dollar of the life care plan that's the medical needs and the future needs he's going to have for the next 80 years of his life. They funded that life care plan, realizing that none of that would have been necessary if just the basic ordinary standards of good medical care had been provided.
That's another good thing to talk about, is what happens with the money. Is the jury understood and I think awarded what they did because they know that the money is going to be put in trust for him to meet all his needs for the next 80 years. And it's really a weighty responsibility for the jury to try and figure out what all he's going to need until 2099. I mean, you're starting to talk that kind of a long-term care need. And again, I think they got it right, that they wanted to make sure that he did have the opportunity to live his best and fullest life. But it's a pretty weighty responsibility when you're trying to figure that out. I don't envy the jury their job, but I'm, I guess, reaffirmed that it's a great process that we have.
I agree. And so folks that might learn about this and see, well, wow, that's a $7.88 million verdict, and think, oh, this is just another frivolous case, another case where a runaway jury does something that creates problems for society. What they would really want to understand with that is this takes care of what this baby's needs are going to be for the next 80 years of his life. And these needs are significant, and all would have been avoided if this doctor simply hadn't put forceps on his head, and if there had been a discussion with the mother where she would have said no.
We need to talk about his mother a little bit too, because you talk about a brave woman, and you know, his father as well, who was serving in the military, but she really championed his cause and didn't just accept what had happened wrongly to him, but came to us, talked with us, had us speak for her, and she really did a fantastic job of standing up for his rights and making sure that even though this terrible harm had happened to him, that she tried to hold those who did it accountable, and then got at least some measure of compensation for him. And I think a lot of times we may accept if we have a bad outcome or bad care, and we don't ask enough questions as patients. I think sometimes we just assume that the doctors or the hospitals do everything right, when in fact we know sometimes mistakes are made. Sometimes people, not because they're trying to cause harm, but they do. And if they cause harm, they need to be responsible for that harm. And I don't know how you would ever know that if she hadn't stepped forward and asked us to look into it more, because she just knew it didn't go right.
Terrific, Mom. And I know you agree with me on this. Really, again, confirms what an honor it is to do what we do for a living. It's really the best job around, where we can fight for and hopefully make a difference in people's lives, like what with the help of a Joplin jury occurred here.
Right.